The 4 myths of why not to build in Phygital or why not to be Phygital.
This myth is true. Magical experiences which weave offline and online together and right tech, that's the definition of Phygital. I don't think scale is a question at all. And it is very hard to get right.
This was LensCard, which is an outstanding company, clear miss for us. Category that is large, but one where getting the prescription right matters. And so made the decision to go offline very early to build that trust. Hi everyone. Today we're going to talk about myths and learnings from India's Phygital boom. Vikram, thank you for doing this with me. Starting with some context, a lot of India's GDP growth today is being digitally led. For many users, their first credit card, for example, might be issued by a fintech. The first smartphone they're buying, they might be buying online. And so for many founders, they're thinking online only in their strategy. Our view is that they should be thinking online first, not online only, and offline does have some advantages. In a country with such high population density and low labor cost, offline should play an important part of everyone's Phygital strategy. Let's start with what is Phygital and why it's important.
I'm excited about this podcast because I think I'm already disagreeing with you with what you said in the introduction. And that's the point of this, to go back and forth. Because I think in certain cases, you could be offline first, and we'll discuss some of that, right? And I think it's clear you can't be offline only, but you could be offline first and then scale online and so on. What is Phygital? It's not that Phygital means offline. For us, Phygital means creating unique, magical journeys that weave together the right mix of offline and online and using digital in the right ways, such that there is a journey that is created for the user that could not be created before. And if you just take any business, the first is how do you acquire users? That can be online or offline. How do you get them to sort of manage their funnel and get them to try or buy at the end, love your value prop, try or buy. And then how do you get them to love your experience of the whatever product that you have and build trust? And then how do you get them to repeat? I would argue each of these in different ways could be online, could be offline. And what we are finding is that founders and startups are creating these magical experiences that weave together. Something is online, something is offline, and then building the right tech for it. Before, building a digital business was make a website. Today, building a digital business could be to do deep underwriting tech and deep customer experience tech. And that might be the right tech for your business. So magical experiences which weave offline and online together, and right tech. That's the definition of Phygital.
The 4 myths of why not to build in Phygital or why not to be Phygital. Myth 1 is that the initial CAC that you called out and the scalable CAC is higher if you are Phygital or if you're offline. So that's myth 1. Myth 2 that we have heard is that going offline means you become slow and it's harder to scale. Myth 3 is that these customer experience journeys that you're describing are just way too complex and way too hard to stitch together. And myth 4 is that maybe it is relevant, but it's relevant in maybe a few sectors, but not broadly relevant across sectors. So let's double click on each of these myths. And maybe we start with CAC, because I know you have a couple of companies that you're close to that you have a point of view on.
There is CAC and there is CAC. And what I mean by that is you can have initial CAC and then you can have scalable CAC. And I think the answer is different for different businesses on where you land on initial CAC and scalable CAC. And I'm going to take the position of the offline world and say, by the way, offline CAC is better than online CAC. And for a lot of fintech businesses and financial services businesses, we still see for scale, offline CAC is far lower than online CAC. And I know you're going to prove me wrong with other examples, but let me take that position and give you a few examples. Dezerv, one of our companies, which is in the wealth tech space, by the way, they have an offline only sales motion, and they have an online plus offline sales motion, or an online plus inside sales with physical touch points sales motion. By the way, both of them work beautifully. And for both of them, their CAC for a rupee of AUM is far lower than everyone else. their RM productivity, which is their relationship manager productivity, is 4x that of any offline incumbent, and by the way, higher than any online incumbent as well. And that's because they've stitched this journey together between offline and online. We're just investing in another business, which is a consumer lending business. And that consumer lending business actually is built on the top of DSAs, which is distribution service agents or distribution sales agents. And these DSAs are very prevalent in the financial services world. And I actually went in thinking that their CAC would be higher than online CAC. And lo and behold, I realized that they've built the right tech to manage those DSAs. They have their own teams which are on that platform, which then, so I call it a managed DSA model. In that managed DSA model, their offline CAC is actually better than any online consumer credit platform for the same loan ticket size or comparable loan ticket size. Last example, and I promise I'll stop for the offline offline team. But if I look at D2C brands, and if you take most D2C brands for scale, they have to tap offline and they have to go offline. And so, yes, they have to go offline for scale, but then why do so many D2C brands start online? It's because it takes a lot of money to go offline, because going offline is not that easy. Going offline means, yes, you have to do potentially digital advertising plus sort of offline TV advertising and so on. But more importantly, you have to have availability everywhere. You have to have working capital in order to get to the distribution universe. So for an early PMF journey, to make an offline choice off the get-go is very hard because you haven't built all of that. So it's easier, even though your CAC is higher, but the total money that you need in order to test your product is a lot lower online. So you start online, but in order to scale, which is your scalable CAC, has to be offline.
So I'm going to give the counter examples. Let's take consumer credit, company that we are close to OneCard, outstanding founding team. We've done a few podcasts on their journey, but one of the interesting things that they did was they launched a credit scoring app. And with that credit scoring app, they were able to basically onboard a lot of users. And today, if I compare them to, let's say, SBI Cards, which is a public company, which publishes its data, which largely drives growth through the banker channel, their CAC would be, call it in the 4,000, 5,000 rupee range. Versus OneCard, because of OneScore, is magnitudes lower. 4 to 5x at least, possibly even more lower than SBI Cards. Or let's take Zerodha, which is an online first broker. Their ARPU by CAC is 10x plus versus some of the traditional companies in the same category are closer to 5x ARPU by CAC.
So the answer to the question on, is Phygital CAC higher, is my favorite answer. It depends. and so, and I think that's the right answer, which is basis your category, basis the user, basis how much money you're trying to extract from the user, you have to actually figure out what is the mix of offline and online that works for you. If you're trying to reach a very wealthy user and try to extract a lot of value from them the first up, whether it's a B2B customer or B2C customer, it's likely you need more offline. Whether if the cost of the initial transaction is low for the user, then it's likely you can extract that just on purely online. Or you can craft a magical journey like what OneCard did.
Yeah. Let's double click on myth number 2, which is going offline means you're going to slow down, it's going to be harder to scale, and basically you'll just slow velocity down.
I think there are two parts of it. One is scale, and the other is the time it takes to scale. And on scale, I think if you look at the number of offline businesses in India, which have humongous scale, I don't think scale is a question at all, right? So the question is, does it take 20 years to get to that scale, right? Yes, you can get to that scale, and India is many countries in just one. You have many types of distribution. Online doesn't reach everyone yet, and so on. I think the question is much more about speed rather than scale. So let's give a few examples. The first is a company called 5-Star. It was in our portfolio over 8-9 years back. Went public a couple of years ago. That business is multiple thousand crores of AUM and run rating more than 100 million of PAT, right? So that's scale. And that company has taken 8 to 9 years to build that business. Now, what we are seeing is we are now investing in a second set of incumbents, the second set of startups rather, which are taking that learning from Frystar. They're going after a very similar user, and it's a company that we've just invested in, which is an SMB offline lending company. Now, they are able to cater to a user which is maybe 1/3 the size of Five-Star. So Five-Star couldn't cater to them because it was a completely offline model. But because this company, because they built the right tech, they're A, able to acquire a smaller user, but B, they're able to scale just as fast as Five-Star, if not faster, and are already at a few hundred crores of AUM and getting to touch profitability. Now, what have they done? They've done the right tech. So all of their sales tech is online, self-built, and built for fraud management and making sure they're able to collect a lot of data, which is the UPI, GST data, and so on, of that particular user, which is needed to underwrite much smaller loans than what Five-Star was able to do. So it's the same learning, right tech early, and ability to serve a user which is much smaller. And we're seeing that they're growing just as fast. And Five-Star gives us a sense of what scale they can get to.
Yeah. And I guess the example that maybe in another sector is Mamaearth, which if I look back 2-3 years ago, would have been less than maybe 15% offline. Today, the brand Mamaearth will at least be 50% plus offline. So if I just triangulate their growth over the last few years, most of their growth has actually come from offline expansion. And this offline expansion, just to be clear, it's still scratching the surface. There are, I think, 1.5 lakh, maybe 2 lakh stores or points of sale, most of which are obviously GT. But India has millions of retail stores, which they could get to. So that's the headroom for growth. So yes, it may take more time at the beginning, but is there scale? Like absolutely, no discussion, no debate. Maybe myth 3, these customer journeys you're describing, it just sounds to me like it's too much work and it's way too complex and very hard to get right. And I'm struggling to think. I can think of one example, but I don't know if you have other examples.
So this myth is true. And it is actually complex. And it is very hard to get right. And therein lies the opportunity for incredibly smart founders to create that journey. And that in itself can create definitely an edge and potentially a long-term moat, because that experience will just compound over a period of time. So one of the examples that comes to mind is around the insurance business. And if you see the insurance business, there's been there's this explosion of POSP models, point of sales type models, where it is a bunch of players which are coupling offline IFAs or independent financial advisors or independent financial planners who then sell these products and so on. Why is that needed? Because it requires both awareness as well as high financial trust, both, right? Because people are not as aware that you need insurance, and it's a high AOV transaction, and therefore it needs much higher financial trust. Therefore, you need a person who's coming in, sitting with you on a Sunday, drinking chai, talks like you, and is able to convince you to make this purchase. Now, where has digital played a role? Digital has played a role in ensuring there is a very wide bouquet of insurance products which are then available. Digital has played a role in making sure that the KYC of this customer is done very, 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 very quickly. And they have an online onboarding journey where somebody sits with you on a tab and it's a few clicks and the insurance is in your inbox over a period of time. And so before it used to take weeks, now it's there in hours. That's the place where there is right tech, but they have used that offline touch point of IFAs, who is usually a cousin or an uncle who's coming in and has trust, who's walking in the door, educating that IFA, training that IFA, such that they have this digital experience at the back, along with a familiar face.
No, I think the point on trust is very interesting and instructive, because so many of these categories are getting built for the first time, And India is a penetration story for most of these businesses. And for these new users who are coming into kind of consumption bracket now, trust is key. And the way trust was built in the past was different, but it sounds like trust being built through in-person plus online plus offline interactions can actually create magic.
And I think it's not that only offline creates a trust. A lot of the time, if I just look at the AA or the account aggregator framework and so on, there it's actually digital creating that trust. Because with AA, and I think most people know what an account aggregator is, it gives you a sense of all of your accounts and the data of all of your accounts in one place. And you'll see that there are unique digital experiences where you sign on and that person is using an AA at the back, and they suddenly tell you this is who you are and then this is how much money you have across all of your accounts. The fact that that person know, and that just gives you a sense, spooky sometimes, but it's also, oh, that person knows you, right? And because they know you, they can give you a much better recommendation. So there's also a way to create trust, which is more online first trust versus offline.
And the consumer example that I was going to reference was Lenskart, which is an outstanding company, clear miss for us. But Piyush, the team there, category that is large, but one where clearly like getting the prescription right matters, getting the fit right matters. And so made the decision to go offline very early to build that trust. And consumers were able to visit offline, get their prescription, get their right fit figured out, such that when they purchase their second product or over time eyewear has become a lifestyle category where people have many pieces of eyewear. You can just complete all of those subsequent transactions and repeat transactions online. And I can think of other sectors like B2B where those
it's a great
examples play out.
example of where you do offline acquisition but online repeat, right? Off business is company that we're both involved in, and that's exactly that. The first transaction requires a higher degree of selling and trust deficit that needs to be bridged. But after that, once they're on that online experience, then the repeat is just online, and that drives much greater efficiency.
So we've spoken of consumer and we've spoken of fintech, and I can see it. I'm still gonna lean towards online first, but is it just those two sectors? Like myth 4 was it's relevant, but it's relevant in a few sectors, not everywhere.
So are there sectors where it is completely digital and offline doesn't matter at all? My son is a gamer. Actually, both my sons are becoming gamers. And yes, in that world, everything is online because you're just living in an online world. So are there sectors at an extreme where it's unlikely to matter? Yes, there are. But I would argue it's actually a much larger set of sectors where creating this offline, online, and phygital experience, which is unique, matters. Let's take SaaS.
Yeah.
So SaaS is a sector where you would assume that these are digital buyers and they're buying a digital product, which is a software product. Why do you need offline at all? Well, it turns out as we have more and more SaaS companies and they are selling to enterprise users who are, and these enterprise users are all across the world, and they need to make a decision, which is a $30,000-$40,000 decision, annual purchase decision, or $100,000 purchase decision. They want to meet you. They want to meet the founder. They want to meet the sales head, and so on. So we are seeing these companies spend a lot more on offline brand, on offline events, offline demos, which then lead to a creation of a community. Yes, the community meets virtually and so on, but there's nothing that creates a magic like an offline meetup of CIOs who are talking to each other, all of whom have the similar problem, and they all think, hey, this company could actually solve this. And in that, we are seeing much better pipeline discussions happening, which are then leading to much better conversions. So it's a software-only product and software-only sale, but it needs a lot of offline. There, I can see those founders that invest in the right tech for the handoffs, because there's a very senior connect that's been made by the company with potentially a CXO, and then you need to farm that with the team. And maybe it's a founder to CXO connect that's been made, and then that needs to be farmed with the team. So people who actually invest in the right funnel, which is a sales funnel to go from offline to online, they're leading to much better conversions than anyone else.
Very helpful. And I guess Maybe AI is the one sector where that's the last bastion of staying purely digital, or
You mean a digital buyer talking to a digital seller, and then the AI makes the sale? It could happen, but at least right now, what is happening is that we are seeing AI be a co-pilot and be a partner on that journey, which makes the offline touch point more efficient. And we are seeing a lot of companies be able to increase the span of their offline customer service agents or of their offline sales agents by using AI.
no, thank you. I guess if you have to pull it together, what are the learnings now for founders? Like, what should they take away from this? Yes, it sounds like they should spend more time thinking about it, but now, practically, how does it apply to their life?
I think number one is to start early. You can't suddenly make this choice that, oh, I'm going to be Phygital. It's a muscle that you build from the beginning. And therefore, I would hire those kind of people in the team. Make sure that there is a push and pull between the online only digital people and the offline people from the get-go. And that tension is a healthy tension. Questioning whether this touch point with the user or this touch point with the stakeholder should be online or offline. So that's the number one learning for me, which is start early, build that muscle memory or digital muscle memory for your organization. Number two is truly invest in creating that unique experience, because that's what's going to determine whether your users love you, whether your employees love you, and so on. I think what is most important on these journeys is to chart the handoffs between online and offline to online. And whoever does these handoffs better, or whichever startups and teams do these handoffs better, I think they're going to succeed in building those consumer experiences. In those handoffs, I would say a lot of the right tech to be built is internal facing and not necessarily external facing. I think that first wave with digital, it was just about building a digital experience for your end buyer or end user. But a lot of the time, the user for the right tech is inside your organization. And even though they might be serving as an offline touch point to the user, I think they will be using a lot of tech, which helps make them more efficient, increases their span, and so on. So invest in those unique experiences and right tech. At times, it could be internal facing.
I like the fact that you focused on execution. I'll take the Patli Gali and I will focus on more macro. I will say for founders, they should basically think at scale, think big. Offline really only works at scale. And so given the opportunity in India, you can actually think very big. Lenskart today has 2,000 plus stores. Ola Electric has 1,000 plus experience centers. Mamaearth has a potential target of million plus stores. So scale, just think big. And then two, I would say think about this initial CAC and your scalable CAC in a way where you really build the cost of offline being low into your thinking very early. Can you use signals from online to be able to predict where you should set up things offline? Can you use traffic from online to be able to seed the right markets? And so the cost of going offline does matter, but can you bring the learnings from online and offline CAC together to be able to target your customer better?
Just in terms of closing thoughts, what I would leave founders with is one, follow your instinct. And if your instinct is taking you to offline, that is likely a right instinct. And I see a lot of founders shirk away from that, saying, "Oh, I'm building a digital company, and maybe investors won't like it, or how does this work with my employees who I've sold into a tech first or tech only business." So I think follow your instinct, and if it's taking you into an offline, touch point in order, because you know the user best and that offline touch point is important to that user, don't shirk away from it, and build that offline presence early, and convert Phygital from in your mind as, oh, this is something which is a weakness into a strength. Because what we are seeing with our best companies which are employing Phygital is that they are getting ahead of their only digital counterparts, because they are able to build trust faster, or they be able to extract more AOV, or their customer experience is just phenomenal and that leads to word of mouth about them. So Phygital strength, and it helps you beat your competition.
Thank you. Enjoyed this chat. Hopefully founders decide to go Phygital, and we're already seeing this in our portfolio. Hopefully more founders go Phygital.